Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for the NHL Central Weekly Recap. And if you're wondering why we're doing this on a Thursday instead of a Monday, well, you can blame the Blues and the Predators, because I basically just felt it would make more sense to just include all of the round one ending games all at once, as opposed to do a few games and then let those rounds end and then round two start and do two different rounds come next week. So I will be returning to the Monday date for next week's video, all things considered, hopefully anyway. But let's get right into it. The Dallas Stars beat the Minnesota Wild 4-2 to end their series, but went 2-2 on the week. They lost Game 3 in Minnesota on Monday by the score of 5-3. Took Game 4 3-2. Lost Game 5 on Friday by the score of 5-4 in overtime, and then held on for a win by the same score of 5-4 on the road on Sunday to wrap up the series. Looking at some of their goal scoring, they had quite a few multiple goal scorers, and this is just in this past week. 3 goals for Patrick Sharp, 3 goals for Spezza, and then single goals, or Jamie Benn, had 2 goals, 2 for Goligoski, and then single goals for Hemsky, Skevier, Eves, Oduya, and Klingberg. So the Dallas Stars offensively are really rolling. They finished the first round with the most goals scored out of anybody, and that includes Washington, who kind of fell off the map just a tiny bit compared to their regular season pace. But the Dallas Stars finished the regular season with the most goals and finished the playoffs with the most goals in round 1 anyway, with 21. Minnesota obviously lost 4-2 as well. Despite playing the Stars very close and forcing a comeback in Game 6, they couldn't get that finished off, though. Zach Parise never managed to make his way back into the series, and that really kind of hampered the Wild offensively. Devan Dubnyk had a few good games here and there, but he made some costly mistakes as well, including a goal that was kind of just really off the wall. The puck popped way up in the air, and it ended up being the 5th goal for Dallas in that 5-4 loss for the Wild in the deciding game. Popped way up in the air, and Dubnyk is just kind of standing there. He's almost leaning against his crossbar as though he assumed that it was going out of play. Well, it plopped right down in front of the crease. Somebody popped it right back in, and that ended up being the winning goal. And he was just kind of he was the opposite, I would say, of what he was last season when the Minnesota Wild defeated the St. Louis Blues, and he was a huge reason for that, and he was a huge reason why they did not win in this series. Looking at some of the goal scorers for the Minnesota Wild, Jason Pominville went off this week. He had 4 goals, 2 for Koivu, 2 for Spurgeon. Chris Porter scored, as well as Haula, Coyle, Granlund, Niederreiter, Schroeder, and Brodin. The Chicago Blackhawks fell to the St. Louis Blues in 7, and as you can tell, I'm happy about that. But let's get serious here. The Chicago Blackhawks fell, as I mentioned, in 7 games. It's likely a culture shock to Chicago a little bit, as they're used to making pretty much the conference finals, if not the Stanley Cup finals. Winners of 3 cups in the last 6 years, and losing out to Los Angeles a couple times as well. So it's a little bit of a change for them to lose in the opening round. This is going to be the first year since the playoff expanded since 1980 that no original 6 or Canadian team will make the final 8. So that was an interesting stat as well, with the Chicago Blackhawks being knocked out in round 1. Corey Crawford proved me wrong. I was kind of a doubter of his. Still am just a tiny bit. I still kind of compare him to Chris Osgood, to where he wins, but I don't necessarily think he's in that upper echelon. But he proved me wrong in this series, showing his skills by standing on his head several times and really keeping his team in it, but it wasn't enough in the end. The Blackhawks got goals, 3 from Shaw, 3 from Hossa, 2 for Keith, 2 for Anisimov, Panarin, Kane, Ladd, Weiss, and Van Riemsdyk rounded out the scoring, and that was just from this past week for the Blackhawks. Clearly, the St. Louis Blues won the series 4-3, and you can check out all the stats on my article at bleedinblue.com. Obviously, if you're watching this in the article, then you don't need to go anywhere, but go to the site if you're watching on YouTube, and you can see all the Blues stats from this past week. But how big was holding down Patrick Kane in that series? He only had 1 goal the entire series, and that is incredibly surprising. I thought he'd get at least 2 or 3 over the course of the 7 games. Only got the 1, and St. Louis Blues were able to keep him and Jonathan Toews off the board, and that really ended up being one of the big keys for the St. Louis Blues winning in that series. They still got pushed to 7. They made a few mistakes that kind of aided that, but that shows you how quality Chicago can be when they have 2 of their best players, 2 of the best players in the world, pretty much held off the board, and they still managed to push that series to 7 games. And finally, we wrap up with the Nashville Predators. They went up surprisingly on the Anaheim Ducks 2-0, but then dropped the next 3, and that's where we started off this past week. Anaheim got 3 in a row, taking a game on Tuesday by the score of 3-0, and then the Preds got shut down in Game 4, losing 4-1. Saturday's Game 5 went to the Ducks 5-2, so Anaheim for at least the second straight year, and maybe a couple years now, went up by the score, by a series lead of 3-2 and failed to wrap things up. Nashville took Game 5 on Monday, beating the Ducks in the Music City 3-1, and then, that was Game 6. My brain is all just kind of scattered here. Game 7 didn't disappoint either, though. Nashville took an early 2-0 lead on Wednesday night, and I obviously say that because I'm recording it on Wednesday, and just in case you're watching this on another day, so you know when Game 7 was. The Ducks scored in the 3rd period, though, to really kind of make some nails bitten over there in Nashville. Our friends at Smashville Proud and the Pred Lines also just kind of getting a little nervous there, but they ended up holding on even though Anaheim started throwing the kitchen sink at them. Pecorine had to make 36 saves to pull off that Game 7 win. Nashville only had single goals from anybody in the week. Mike Fisher, Salomaki, Johansson, Neil, Weber, Ekholm, Gaustad, and Colin Wilson rounded out the scoring for everybody for Nashville. The NHL has made my job a little bit easier this coming week as the Blues and the Blues... It's going to be that kind of video, apparently. The Blues and Stars will be playing on the same nights as the Predators and Sharks. So therefore, even if everything doesn't necessarily wrap up around the same times, it will aid in keeping everything kind of more to where I like to keep it in terms of weekly wrap-ups. Game 1s for both teams are going to be this Friday. The Blues are going to be playing at 7 o'clock. Now, these are all Central Standard Times. Nashville's game will begin at 9:30. Games 2s will both be on Sunday. St. Louis will be in Dallas, still obviously with the Stars having the best record in the Western Conference. That one is going to drop the puck right around 3 Central Standard Time, and then 7 o'clock for Game 2 between the Predators and Sharks. So, once again, next week we will back to be on Monday, but hopefully you enjoyed this weekly wrap-up. A little bit extended here as we wrap up round 1 for the Central Division teams, and we'll be back on schedule next week. But until the next time, this has been the Bleedin' Blue weekly look at the NHL Central. Until the next time, I'll see you then.